Welcome to College Football Wraparound, everybody. I am Cooper Naylor, your host, and I am so glad that you could join me. As you can see, another little rearrangement of the studio, and I have brought my green screen back up, and I've got my microphone put up where I've gotten me a new little thing to get my microphone a little bit closer to me, and so that it's not so much of me having to project as much, and now I can just kind of talk in a normal voice, and you hear me very well, and maybe it can get all the echoing out a little bit. So we'll see what happens. So we have got a stacked show, folks. And when I mean stacked, I mean it's gonna be great. So we're going to start off by talking about my poll, and then we're going to talk about Bama struggling against Texas A&M. Then we're going to move on and talk about the quarterback situation with Kansas and Oklahoma. Then we're going to go to Kentucky and look at how Will Levis is doing. And then we're going to talk about USC and UCLA. Is there LA dominance in the Pac-12? Then we're going to talk about Oklahoma's downfall. And then we've got our top 15 undefeated teams. And then after that, we'll recap the predictions to this point. And then it'll be time to make some picks, and it'll be time for some college football. Also, just to let y'all know, today at 2 o'clock, we have got coverage of the Alabama-Tennessee game. Be ready to join for that because it's going to be epic. I mean, let me tell you, we have got a 30-minute pregame show leading into Bama, Tennessee. And then we've got the game, and it's going to be awesome. So you do not want to miss this. College football on Savor Broadcast Network, back for the first time since week 1 when we did Ohio State and Notre Dame. So I pull up my rankings so far. Here it is. So, and I'm going to get that banner at the bottom, get that away so that y'all will be able to see that. So, here's my rankings. Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia. There's the top 4. And then you go on down the list, Clemson, Michigan, USC, Oklahoma State, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oregon, Mississippi State, Syracuse, and then on down. So there are a bunch of teams on bye week this week that are in my rankings that'll probably stay. So, and then you can see there underneath Tulane, you can see the teams that I've dropped out. So that is a look at my rankings. And really, today is the day that we really see what happens with the rankings, because we've got a bunch of ranked matchups: Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, Michigan, Oklahoma State, TCU, Syracuse, and NC State. So a bunch of good matchups. We will see what happens within the realm of college football this week. But right now, let's talk about Bama and their struggles, because let me tell you, watching that game, it was not pretty for the Tide, because let me tell you, they played them a poor football game. And what was the football game? Okay, here is the honest truth about Alabama, Texas A&M. What it was two teams who really couldn't play that great of offense. I mean, if you look at it, the only times Texas A&M, they scored 17 points, 17 of their 20 points they scored were off of Bama turnovers. Think about that. Bama turned the ball over, I believe, 4 times. 3 of those turnovers were the mistake of the quarterback, Jalen Milroe. And you had 1 turnover by the running back, Jace McClellan. So you ask, what was the deal with Bama? Well, they're not as good with the backup quarterback. Jalen Milroe is not going to be the guy that's going to save the day for Bama. And it was a game where the defenses looked good. I mean, if you're looking at this Alabama defense and you thought, well, it was good considering that they had to endure a lot of plays and offense did not help them out any. And if you're looking from Texas A&M, there was a lot of fight from that team. Given the way that they played, if they would play that way every week, you know, they may not lose to Mississippi State. They may not lose to Appalachian State. And you're looking at this team, they're 5-1. Now, granted, the quarterback they played, Haynes King, he did start at the beginning of the season. Then he was replaced by Max Johnson. And then now what you got is Haynes King is back in the starting role. And, you know, I thought he did bring a great game. I thought he played a great game for A&M. It just wasn't enough at the end of the day when you're playing Nick Saban's Alabama squad. And plus, Alabama was looking for revenge. And this was not the kind of game Bama wanted to beat A&M on. I mean, really, it was not. Because if we're all truthfully being honest about this, Alabama wanted to win this big, and that was not the case. Bama had to play a close game against an A&M team that really is not incredible. And so that was what you got. And this is not a winning formula for the Tide. Because coming up, Alabama's got Tennessee, and then I believe they've got Mississippi State. So let me look this up real quick, just to show you who Bama has got coming up. Because let's be honest, if Alabama does not play a good game against Tennessee, they're not going to win this game. Now, I'll get into my prediction of Alabama and Tennessee a little bit later. But they have coming up, they've got Mississippi State after. So today they're going to Tennessee. Then next week they've got a primetime matchup against Mississippi State at home. Then bye week, and then November 5th they've got LSU. November 12th they're going to. So the LSU and Ole Miss are road games back to back. Then they are at home against Austin Peay. And then, of course, they end the season against Auburn. So, down the stretch, what can we expect from Alabama? Well, here is the definer, the definite game changer for Alabama, and that is Bryce Young. Bryce Young has brought the ability to make throws that can help a team, and he's calm and poised down the stretch of the game, and it helps this offense because this is an offense that tends to get rattled in big games. If you've watched Alabama the last 2 years with Bryce Young as quarterback, that's what you found, is that Alabama is a team that is very heavily influenced by Bryce Young. So, getting him back would be big today against Tennessee, because then they could potentially, win this football game and get confidence back. Now, there's another thing that's been thrown out there that honestly would be interesting to see, and that is if Bryce Young doesn't play, and if Jalen Milroe is really struggling throughout the game against Tennessee, we may see the third string quarterback for Alabama, Ty Simpson, who could be better than Milroe. And then who knows? If he does well, then that may lead into a conversation, which is if Ty Simpson is really good and better than Milroe, then why is Milroe the second string? That's the question. And I don't know if we will get an answer from Nick Saban on that, if ever. But Ty Simpson may be the guy who could be the one that really can throw the ball much better. And I mean, that's the thing that Alabama's offense was missing last week, was the ability to throw the football to those star-studded receivers. I mean, let's be honest. Jalen Milroe, he's good, but he's not. He's more of a quarterback that you would see in a group of 5 team, and that would be average. That's just the basis of what Jalen Milroe is. I don't think he's incredible. Comment below what you think about this, because I really want to know what you think about Jalen Milroe. But my personal opinion is I don't believe he's the guy for Alabama, and I don't think he should be the second string anymore. I feel like he should be third string, because I think if Ty Simpson comes in and shows that he's better, then he's got to be the backup for Bryce Young. It's just that plain and simple. All right, moving on. Kansas versus Oklahoma. That's coming up on ESPN2 here in a little while. And the quarterback news is really the thing that is dominating the headlines. So, Dillon Gabriel, Oklahoma quarterback, now he got hurt on a play against TCU a couple weeks ago. He's trying to slide, and then it was just a very, very dirty hit by the TCU defender. And so he has been out ever since. They said it was a concussion, but he is expected to play today against Kansas. That would be big for an offense who, without him, did not even score. Think about that for a moment, folks. Oklahoma did not even score without Dillon Gabriel. Now, when was the last time Oklahoma was shut out? I don't remember ever hearing of Oklahoma being shut out. So, I mean, this is something that is incredible to see, that Oklahoma being shut out of a football game. So, the last time that Oklahoma was shut out was November 7th, 1998. Think about that for a moment. Almost 24 years ago was the last time they were shut out. That in itself is insane to think about. Oklahoma was held scoreless against Texas. Now, what does this say? Well, I think what this says is that Oklahoma without Dillon Gabriel is not as good. Now, had he stayed in the game against TCU, I don't know if they would I don't think they'd come back and win the game, but they certainly probably would have put up more than just 24 points. I mean, I think what you're seeing, though, is that, and this is what I was kind of coming into the season, I was like, okay, here's my only downsides to this Oklahoma football team. That is, you get a new head coach, defensive minded. You're losing your defensive coordinator. You've lost your offensive scheme that you have been incredible with. But you still got Dillon Gabriel, so you should be okay. And that's kind of what I've gotten out of it, is that they've been okay. But this is still not the same Oklahoma teams we saw in the past few years with Lincoln Riley and putting up a bunch of points and having these great seasons. Now, let's be honest about this though. They're 3-3, new head coach, whole new everything. This is just how it goes for most teams, is that you struggle a little bit with new head coach. And I mean, here's the thing. This is the thing with me, is that you get fan bases that are so dead set on when we get a new head coach, we've got to instantly be better. You cannot do that. Look, you have to go into this realistically and say, okay, we are going to struggle. And that's just the honest truth about this, because we're going to struggle. New head coach, new system, new everything. And it's the whole landscape of everything you're doing is totally new. So you have to expect, like if you are in Oklahoma, I think right now, if you look at it, I think at best, like 8-4. Personally, I do not see them beating Oklahoma State later in this year. Because if you watch Oklahoma State play, they are an incredible football team. For that matter, I don't know if they beat Kansas today. So, I don't know. And then, okay, so here's the other big news, and that is Kansas quarterback Jalon Daniels is out. So they're going to have to lean on backup quarterback Jason Bean, who came in and played well for Kansas last week. And they didn't win the game. They are now sitting at 5-1, but here's the thing. Kansas still has a lot of confidence right now because they still look like they're in this to really look good. And Jason Bean, he was a guy who played at North Texas a lot before coming to Kansas. And really, I think the big factor in today's game between Kansas and Oklahoma is going to be defense. Defense, I feel like, is the big key here because depending on how these defenses play, I feel like is going to be the total outcome of this, because I feel like defense is going to win this one. So I feel like this is going to come down to the last play of the game. Who's going to make the stop? Is it going to be Kansas or is it going to be Oklahoma? That's to be determined right now when the game kicks off here in a little while. So Kansas and Oklahoma, it's going to be a fun one. Big news with the quarterbacks, but we will see what happens. And quite honestly, I do feel like this is going to be a really fun game to watch. And going down the stretch, I feel like you look at these teams and, I feel like Kansas without Jalon Daniels will be fine. It's going to be Oklahoma. And if Dillon Gabriel gets hurt again, that is the big deal right there. Because Oklahoma is not good without Dillon Gabriel. And I think that in today's world of college football, quarterback can be the deciding factor. It just can, because if you look at it from a standpoint of, okay, look at this. We've got guys who are not incredible, but as long as we got a good quarterback, we're fine. Alabama, I've talked about Alabama today, how the quarterback changes the whole dynamic. Auburn could be a good example of that, because if you think about Auburn, last year had Bo Nix. They looked like they were a decent team until he got hurt. Now this year they're terrible. I mean, I'm just saying that, and it's just true. They're terrible. And Bo Nix was the difference. All right. So now let's talk about Will Levis, Kentucky quarterback. He is expected to play today against Mississippi State. Now, I believe he didn't play last week, but so looking at Will Levis and so it was a left foot injury that he's been dealing with. And so last week, Kaiya Sheron made his first career start at quarterback for Kentucky. And he went 15 of 27 for 178 yards. And that was in I believe that was a loss to South Carolina last week. I believe that was what happened. Yes, so that was in a loss at home to South Carolina. So you look at that, and again, this is another situation where the quarterback is the game changer here for every team. Will Levis is a huge addition for Kentucky when he plays. Now, I mean, if you look at those stats, it doesn't sound like, Kaiya Sheron did terrible. But Will Levis is Kentucky. Without Will Levis, they don't play great. Just like any other team. So, the big story here is that the quarterback situations are always important when it comes to football. Now, when you go to the NFL, you can kind of get away with it because all players are professionals, and you can kind of, quarterback isn't as important. But when you get to college, though, quarterback is so important. You have to have a good quarterback in order to win games. And so Will Levis coming back against Mississippi State, this is no small task either, though. Will Rogers, the quarterback of Mississippi State, has played out of his mind this season. Mississippi State is 5-1, and they come in with a better record than Kentucky. But, Mike Leach is going to bring everything he can against this Kentucky team. What is Will Levis going to do? Is he going to kind of play it safe with that foot and kind of play softer and not really push things, or is he going to play aggressive and really, really go out there and play one of his best football games of his career? That's going to be the deciding factor for me, at least, is just to see how he plays against Mississippi State today. So, I mean, they lost at Ole Miss, and then they lost to South Carolina. That has been what has that's the last two games for Kentucky. So 2 straight losses. And so you can kind of get it where they've got to be better. If they can't play better, then that's going to derail this whole season for Kentucky. So Will Levis is a big deal for Kentucky, and we'll see what happens with the Wildcats. So now I want to turn my attention to LA dominance in the Pac-12. Now this is different. UCLA, USC are both undefeated. Think about that. DTR and UCLA is the more experienced team, but it's USC also in this where new head coach Lincoln Riley, and you got the quarterback Caleb Williams. I mean, receiver Jordan Addison. So this is the new age of college football when you look at USC. And when you look at UCLA, it's just the opposite, where it's the experience and, just the work of these players, which is more of the old school way of doing things, and that is developing the players. So, what does this mean for the Pac 12 with all this dominance? Well, it just means that you've got an incredible, you got incredible play coming out of California. And really, it's going to be incredible to see what happens with these teams. I mean, going down the stretch. And then, wouldn't it be incredible if you get to the last game of the year, UCLA and USC, whenever they play, and that is an undefeated game where both teams are undefeated and the winner is still undefeated? That'd be incredible. So, just the dominance out there in LA is incredible to see. And who knows? This may be your Pac-12 championship right here, USC and UCLA, because they've gone to the new model where they play the two best teams in the conference, which honestly, I love this. I love this, that you don't exactly have to win your division in order to be in the championship game, because now you're taking the two best teams, which, I mean, you look at the Big 12, that's what the Big 12 has been doing for a while now, the American, and it seems to work out better, and you get a better matchup. And so, honestly though, the only two conferences I feel like should not go to that would be the Big 10 and the SEC. They should keep the division winners, because it truly matters, the divisions in the SEC and the Big 10. Personally, from what I've seen, I don't think it matters as much when you get outside of the Big 10 or the SEC, because it's just not quite as, the football's not quite as good elsewhere in the country. So, and also this does show that if both UCLA and USC get to go to the Big 10, that this is incredible football you're going to get too in the Big 10. This is a big boost. Although you're going to lose a lot of rivalries in this, and who knows what else you'll lose, but this is going to be incredible to see how this ends up. So, all right. So, Oklahoma's downfall. And this is just, it is kind of sad to see where they have fallen to. So, for those who are wondering, like, okay, why are we even talking about this? Well, let me tell you. So, Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma. And this is a big deal, folks. You're talking about, you're just talking about incredible, just how incredible this is. And that is, Brent Venables comes in. He's the defensive coordinator at Clemson. He's doing great, but he's never been a head coach. That immediately, when they hired him, I was like, okay, here is a situation when you're Oklahoma and you got no experienced head coach. Now, I understand Lincoln Riley was this way too, but he was the offensive coordinator under Bob Stoops. And plus, Bob Stoops left at a time where he was kind of setting Lincoln Riley up to be the head coach. So, I felt like, okay, that was a better situation if you're Lincoln Riley. And now you've proven yourself to be a great coach, and now you go to USC. Okay. But you get Brent Venables in there. He's a new head coach, and he's a new system because for a long time now, you've only had offensive-minded coaches with Bob Stoops and and Lincoln Riley. It's been offense, offense, offense. So you get Brent Venables in there, and the thing is, I feel like this is going to. I don't know how this is going to work out because I don't know what to expect. Just like an average fan, what can you expect from a team who's getting a new head coach? You can't. And then you lose a lot of transfers too, and it changes things because now you're sitting there. I mean, you've lost 2 quarterbacks, you've lost some receivers. You just lost a lot of players that were vital to that team, and now you're sitting here and you're wondering, okay, what's happened to Oklahoma? Let me tell you what's happened to Oklahoma. That is that Oklahoma is now in a situation where Brent Venables, he's a good coach, but he's still young in his head coaching career. So, my urge to the fans of Oklahoma, do not throw him away so quickly. You can go watch Auburn, how they've done their head coaches. You can go watch Colorado. You can go watch Nebraska. You can go watch all these teams. Everything's a little different. Personally, I felt like Nebraska did it right. You hang on. 5 years is a good time to choose, like, okay, how are you going to do? And, like, is this where you want to be? But now, let me tell you, I think that if you're look at the team like Auburn, all they've wanted to do, because, okay, Alan Green, who I believe was the AD, I think he just stepped down recently. Either way, he's the one who hires Brian Harsin. The boosters didn't like it. The fans didn't like it. Nobody liked Brian Harsin. But if you really look at this, I mean, his first years you cannot get everything out of it. You just cannot expect to get your full result in 1 year. That's the thing that Auburn fans have done, and it's made it difficult for Harsin, and that is Auburn has expected you to be good automatically. You can't expect that. Look at a guy like Nick Saban. His first year in Tuscaloosa, it was not great. He comes back these next few years, and it's incredible to see all the championships he's won at Alabama. Now, again, here's one thing, though. Second years are still developmental. Third years, you should start to see the growth of this team. Fourth year, and then fifth year, here's the fifth year, here's the final product, here's how the team's done, and here's what you're going to expect. That's me personally, how I feel like it has to be. And I feel like that's what you got to go into this as, for Oklahoma and Brent Venables, is that give him some time. Plus, he's a new head coach. He should get more time anyway because he's still trying to learn how does it work being a head coach. So, this will be interesting just to see how this ends up. But the point of everything I say here is that Oklahoma is still going to be good here in the future. But the big thing is going to be the development of Brent Venables as a head coach. He's got to develop, but also at the same time, you got to give it time. Time and development is always the big thing with new head coaches in a new system. It's just like the players. They've got to develop and they've got to grow and they got to get better. Head coaches, that's the same thing. Because without a good head coach, a team can't be good. And let's be honest, this is just the first year. To say that a guy is good or bad based on the first year is not fair because it's only 1 year. So, in all this to say, Oklahoma, just give it time. The process will work. Trust me on this. All right. So, we have top 15 undefeated teams in college football. Coastal Carolina, James Madison, USC, UCLA, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma State, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Clemson, and Syracuse. Some of those you have just come to know they're going to be undefeated at this point in the season anyway. Some of these are shocking. Now, you want to look at it, James Madison's kind of shocking. It's their first year in the FBS, and they're already undefeated at this point in the season. This is incredible. UCLA, USC, Tennessee, TCU, Penn State, Syracuse. I mean, those are kind of the shockers here. And then the ones you're kind of like, okay, it makes sense. Coastal Carolina, and the reason why I say Coastal Carolina is because they've been good these last few years in the Sun Belt, so I'm not shocked at all. And then Georgia and Alabama, you just kind of expect it. Ole Miss, the brand's been built by Lane Kiffin, and I feel like, it's all working out for Kiffin there at Ole Miss. Oklahoma State's not a shocker to me because Mike Gundy is a great head coach, and I'm shocked he hasn't gone to a bigger school by now. Michigan and Ohio State, they're kind of right now the kings of the Big Ten. Michigan finally proved they were really good last year by beating Ohio State, going to the college football playoff, and being Big Ten champions. It was incredible. And then Clemson, we've come to know them to be undefeated, just as they are right now. So, that is the 15 teams that are undefeated. So, with that, it is now time to look at our predictions recap. And here we are with the predictions. I went 7-3 again this past week, and I'm now 33-19 on the season. So, it's now time to get into the picks, and now here we go. NC State at Syracuse, ranked matchup coming up. And I believe this is in prime time. I believe so. Either way. This one's going to be interesting to see, but, it's at the Carrier Dome. Syracuse has looked good. I'm going Syracuse. I feel like they continue their undefeated streak, and they're going to play great football again today. All right, coming up here in a little while, Iowa State and Texas. I almost said Ohio State. I don't know why. But Iowa State at Texas. This is a good one. Iowa State's kind of been struggling these last few weeks. And Texas looked great last week. I mean, they looked great. I'm going to take Texas because I feel like they are looking really great right now. And Quinn Ewers, he is the total difference for Texas because I feel like without him, they're not the same team. And like I said, I think it was last week, Hudson Card is not the guy for Texas. He's not great. So I'm going to take Texas in this game because I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a great game against Iowa State at home. All right. Kansas at Oklahoma. I've talked about this a little bit today, but personally, if I'm going to pick the game, I'm going Kansas. I feel like even though they're going to be playing backup quarterback Jason Bean, I feel like they have showed me enough, and I feel like Oklahoma has not shown me enough to really tell me Kansas wins this football game and Oklahoma just cannot defend it. Oklahoma's defense is awful. And partly because you're still learning the new system. And so we'll see what happens with Oklahoma, but I just feel like Kansas is going to win this game and, do it in a fashion where it's going to be a shootout. So Kansas and Oklahoma in a shootout. That's not crazy to assume. LSU at Florida in prime time. This is a rivalry between two teams that have two new head coaches. Brian Kelly at LSU and Billy Napier at Florida. Honestly, it's in the swamp, but I feel like LSU continues their win streak in the series against Florida. That's just how I see it. All right, Minnesota at Illinois. This is a sneaky good game. You got Illinois, who is looking really good this season. Minnesota, to me, looks really good. I've got to go Illinois in this game. I feel like what Brett Bielema is doing with that team is incredible to see. And I feel like you just cannot – I just feel like they are really good. So I'm going to go Illinois. I feel like they're going to win this football game. All right. Mississippi State at Kentucky. This is an interesting football game. You got two good quarterbacks, two very different offenses as far as the way they want to play. Kentucky wants to run the ball, but they can't do it. I think they've been able to do it much better these last few weeks. You got Chris Rodriguez back, but early in the season it wasn't great, so they wanted to throw the football all around the yard. So we'll see what happens, but I feel like Mississippi State gets the win. Kentucky, I just feel like, is not great this year. So it's going to be Mississippi State winning this football game. And then we move on out west to USC at Utah. Utah has lost 2 games, UCLA and Florida being those teams that have beat them. And I feel like today USC becomes another one that's beat Utah. USC will win this game and do it in a very convincing fashion. They're at Rice-Eccles Stadium in Utah. So that is what's going to happen. All right. Oklahoma State at TCU. That's coming up at 2:30 today. While you listen to me call Alabama and Tennessee, I'll give you updates every so often on Oklahoma State and TCU. But what's going to happen is Oklahoma State will win the football game. I feel like they're too much for TCU because, I like what you're seeing from Mike Gundy as the head coach. I like what I'm seeing from Spencer Sanders, the quarterback from Oklahoma State. I love this team all around, so it's going to be Oklahoma State. Penn State at Michigan. I like Penn State in this one. Both teams are coming in ready to prove themselves because both teams have not really had that game yet where it's been the tough competition. And personally, I just feel like, Blake Corum's had a good season for Michigan, and then Sean Clifford's played really good for Penn State. This is the game, though, where we really see, are these teams for real? And I feel like Penn State gets the win. And honestly, the way I see it, it could end up at the end of the season where Penn State is 11-1, Michigan's 11-1, Ohio State's 11-1. How does that happen? All right, let me tell you. Penn State beats Michigan, and then Michigan beats Ohio State, and Ohio State beats Penn State. Simple enough. Either way. All right, and our last game, the game that we're going to be calling today here on Saber Broadcast Network, Alabama and Tennessee. And my winner is going to be Alabama. I feel like they still pull it out, even though there's still uncertainty with Bryce Young. Either way, that is my picks. This has been College Football Wraparound, and I'm so glad that you've been able to join us today. We are coming back at 2 o'clock today to give you a pregame show, and then it'll be time for the Tide and the Vols. See you later.